it sticking here, kind of like this, you know. But then it's not as visually appealing.
No, it's not as striking.
Yeah, you can't see it. You can't see it like.
Yeah, it's hard to appreciate the blunt.
Can you imagine getting hit with that? Yowza. Hey guys, welcome back. I'm Jason Salyer, and this is Joe.
Hi.
And we are going to be talking about bugging out today. So I think a lot of people have this vision, this fantasy, this dream of bugging out with everything that they need in their backpack, and they end up, they're leaving a point of a very dangerous situation. They're ending up somewhere where it's not so dangerous.
That's right.
And I think for the most part, I think it is an illusion. I think what I always suggest to everybody, and you tell me if I'm wrong, I always tell everybody, bugging out is the last worst case scenario. Like, I'm not going anywhere. I'm staying home as long as possible until the place is on fire.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of how I see it. I think I'm not saying you shouldn't have a bug out plan, right? But I think it needs to kind of fall in the priority. Like if it was a pace plan, kind of towards the bottom of it. Because at this point, you're knowingly ditching your supplies, your security, shelter, all those things. You're knowingly walking away from, and you're trying to go mobile. And if it is, you've adopted the 72-hour, 3-day packing principle. How much are you really going to take with you? So for me, bugging out as like a single guy, I'm not single, but as a single guy kind of makes sense. I mean, who cares? I'm going to throw some stuff in the backpack.
If you're single, it's not as big a deal, yeah.
But when you got to bring your wife and kids and other people with you, then all of a sudden that 3-day pack that you're capable of carrying with you isn't going to quite cover the logistics of everybody involved.
No. It gets a lot hairier when you talk about bringing small children and your wife, all of that with you. That gets much, much tougher.
And then there's the specter of where are you bugging out to? So I hear people discussing, these 50 and 100 mile movement plans, and my gut instinct is, man, that's too far, and that's too much stuff. Because if it's bad enough, you're getting pushed off your where it is you're living. Then it is, I would imagine, you're in a semi-permissive, non-permissive kind of condition, and bugging out to your next logical location probably needs to be something close enough, outside the danger zone that you're in, but close enough if you had to, you could walk it.
Yeah. And how far can you reasonably walk, most people? I mean, what can you realistically cover per day with the stuff that you're carrying on your back? I
think every adult, man and woman, every adult should be able to walk comfortably with 20 to 30 pounds, 10 miles a day.
I feel like that's very reasonable.
It's reasonable. 10 miles a day, that'll get you pretty far. I mean, most metropolitan areas just aren't that long in terms of how far you have to walk out. I've done this before where I've not put them in the center of Atlanta, but I've taken students and made them walk the equivalence of being in downtown Atlanta and just walking out. Just walk out, no cars, no this, just walk out. And I kind of tell them at the end of, look, this is how far you've gone. You didn't notice because I didn't tell you.
Yeah.
And it was more than enough to just walk out of a particular danger zone. And to me, if something's happening, buildings are burning and riots are this, walking around with that big old tick on your back, it looks like a big target.
Yeah.
No matter what color it is, it's a big target. You have supplies in there, whether it's a military or civilian pack.
Sure. Hard to hide it.
Hard to hide.
Yeah.
It's hard to hide your motivation and intent if you got all your supplies on your back and walking out. So if I was in a riot situation, I would expect somebody to target me just because I'm trying to get away from the jazz they're creating,
Mm-hmm.
So what I don't think is talked about enough in a bug out situation, and my favorite logistics approach to getting out of a location. So I'm a big fan of caches.
Mm-hmm.
So I like the idea that...
And we like to say cache.
Yeah, cache. We say cache. Some people say cash. I say cache.
I say cache because it annoys a lot of people watching.
It seems to. Like the little grammar Nazis seem to come out of the woodwork.
There's an E.
There's an
saying
E.
it.
Yeah, I'm not fancy. Yeah, it's coming out.
All right.
But I like the idea of a cache, and a well thought out cache system on whatever your bug out route is. To me, I should be able to walk out of my house naked with nothing on me. And the first place I'm going to is a cache, and I should be able to head to toe equip myself and continue it on with what I'm doing.
That makes the most sense. So you don't have to carry all that crap.
Don't carry.
Yeah.
So, and then maybe have food, water, and if it makes sense, maybe some resupply ammunition, kind of, dotted along your path. And if I was walking, say, a 10-mile stretch and I had multiple caches along the way, it doesn't mean I'm going to use those caches, but they're there if I need it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to I don't want to lose, how's this? I don't know if I'm going to be well fed and well hydrated and well rested when this begins.
Mm-hmm.
I might start this sick. I might be sick when I start this evacuation scenario. I might have, a liter or two of diarrhea in my belly. I might have a fever. I don't know what my condition's going to be because I can't predict it.
Yeah.
So that first cache, I want to have everything in there I need. Maybe some over-the-counter medications. Mm-hmm. Before I throw away clothes, I'll put them in caches.
Yeah.
Right. And then if all my caches have some of my old clothes, all right, then I'll donate them or chuck them or whatever. But my old clothes will go into caches.
Yeah, I think what you're saying about not knowing and you can't necessarily be prepared. So like you might be sick, you might be injured. You can't be ready for all that stuff. And that's how I kind of look at my my fitness regimen, like how I train. So I don't know what I'm getting ready for.
That's right.
And I don't know when it's going to happen. It's not like when I used to coach athletes, I was training for an event or I was preparing them for the season.
Right,
or
you had a target.
It was there, and I knew what was going to happen. And I knew exactly what to expect, and I could prepare for that. What we're talking about is not like that. It's I need to be ready at all times for anything as best as I can, to the best of my ability.
Yeah, so in the military, we like to say, your body is a weapon. And well, it's true. So from a combative standpoint, even if you have better fighting technique than me, at least my body is capable of withstanding, assaults and attacks. And in most cases, I can usually just out-fitness folks.
Yeah.
Like if we're going to grapple and we're going to go toe-to-toe, I mean, most of these guys will get gassed and, they're untrained.
Yeah.
But skipping that piece, if I don't know how far I'm going to go and I don't know what the conditions are going to be, I need to be versatile. I don't focus on like powerlifting and strength. I'm focusing on performance. Can I carry my body weight plus extra? Can I get it up a tree? Can I climb?
I call it general physical preparedness.
It's a big deal. It's a big deal to have your body ready.
Yeah.
Because I would optimally like to drive my bug out.
Yeah.
But I mean,
obviously.
Yeah. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And again, it goes back to whatever is pushing me off my primary location and forcing me into another situation. It may not allow me to drive off, drive away. If my house is surrounded, and again, I'm just making all this up.
Yeah.
But if my house was surrounded,
tire slashed,
and I thought that I needed to evacuate, why would I believe they're going to let my car just leave the driveway?
Yeah. Or everybody's favorite EMP scenario where the car shuts down.
Yeah.
Doesn't work.
There's that. Bicycles are another great option.
Sure.
I mean, the Ho Chi Minh Trail in Vietnam was basically supplied by people with bikes.
Yeah.
And they didn't always ride them because they were going through the jungle.
Yeah. I mean, I have done this, so I know from experience. It was pretty stupid, but I rode a BMX bike, a bike not designed for traveling far distances.
Sure.
I rode a BMX bike 90 miles in a day.
Yeah, no problem.
Fairly easily.
No problem.
No injuries, none of that. But if I was to try to cover 90 miles in a day on foot, it's not possible.
It's not possible.
You can't do it. Yeah.
Plus, you got to take into account where you live. Like where we're at right here in the mountains, there's some slopes.
Oh yeah.
So they're not massive. It's not the Rockies, but if you're not in shape,
it's tough.
Getting up these long gradual slopes. And that's if you're on the road. So bicycles are an excellent option. Caches are for sure overlooked in the overwhelming majority of the bug out plans that I hear. It's like, okay, where's your caches?
Yeah.
Look, you know where you work, by and large.
Mm-hmm.
You know where you live, and you know where you're going.
Mm-hmm.
Put some caches in.
Yeah.
Right? These are not unknowns.
Sure.
So if you're in a situation maybe and again, we're in a rural area, but if you were in an urban setting, I mean, what are you going to do if you were in a single bedroom apartment, 4 stories up in Atlanta? It's like, well, if they're not going to burn your building down, at some point you need to get out of there.
Yeah.
You go walk it.
Yeah.
But you could put caches in. There's a lot of creative ways to do caches.
Sure.
Not a lot of cache room in the city unless you start getting sneaky and shady. And that's largely because law enforcement is on to drug dealers and everything else. And they're tuned into certain types of behavior that a criminal would obviously exhibit. But if you're in there trying to be sneaky and dig stuff up and do this, well, you may not be a criminal, but you're going to catch their eye.
You're going to look suspicious, yeah.
So I think, and Atlanta's a good example. I could totally walk out of Atlanta with a small JanSport high school backpack with an extra lunch, a little bit of water, and my motivation is to zoofoos it out, get out of that place as fast as I can, and I could do that, maybe put that backpack under my shirt or jacket in the right time of year, but
sure,
walking around with that huge 3-day pack on your bag, you're just a target, buddy.
Mm-hmm.
So caches are your friend.
Yeah.
5-gallon buckets go a long way. There's a ton of ways you can do caches. But at the end of the day,
5-gallon bucket's pretty good.
With a gamma lid?
It's waterproof. Yeah.
Yeah, you can go in, and after you seal it up,
Chicken.
There's 1,000 ways to do this, but some easy ways is, look, after you seal it up, throw some hand warmers, open some hand warmers, throw them in there, get rid of, let them start oxidizing and pulling some of the oxygen out of the bucket. And you can even caulk the lid shut, because it'll just peel off when you're ready to open it.
Sure.
Right, just put some outdoor caulking on there,
Yeah.
some silicone, and that'll keep it fairly waterproof.
Or even the lids with the rubber gaskets on them, like for paint and stuff like that, those work good too.
Yeah, they were good.
Yeah.
There's a lot of ways you can basically weatherproof. Really what you're trying to do is season proof, because it gets hot, it gets cold. I'm more worried about the changes in temperatures.
Sure.
So if I'm going to bury a cache, I'll do my best to put it below the frost line. But you don't have to bury them. I mean, there's a lot of ways you can be creative with a cache. How many times have you drove by and you saw those green electric conduit boxes?
Yeah.
Right? And you just totally take it for granted that they're completely legit and they're part of the electric grid.
Of course.
Similar to the fake boulders that hide, pumps in your yard
Yeah.
and stuff. If you got one of those green boxes, and I don't know how many regulations that we're violating by doing
It's
this.
not important.
Right? But if I had that on my property or near my property, and I just put a little concrete pad, and I literally just bolted it down, nobody's ever going to look at it. They're just not going to do it.
Right.
And then all I have to do to recover this cache is just bring a little ratchet with me.
Yeah.
Pull out the box, pull out the contents.
Good to go.
Call it a day.
And
But
it's
caches.
protected inside of there, waterproof. Yeah.
Yeah, so, bug outs are, there's a general term, and I am of the opinion that typically when we say bug outs, we're using the type of language that came out of World War II, and because the other half of that, you bug out of a situation, I don't know if I'm supposed to use a term. There's another term you use to get into the situation, right? That's the other half of it. But basically it requires planning, a little bit of coordination, a little bit of practice. But if you have the right cache system in place, I mean, you could basically bug out with just what's in your pockets and really not worry about it.
Yeah, that's much smarter than trying to load a giant backpack full of everything that you possibly might need.
Yeah,
for
I
a
mean,
month.
if you're in a rural place, like we're not far from the Appalachian Trail and lots of hiking, I think there's room in there for you to mask yourself as a hiker. But yeah, I don't know how far that's going to take you. I mean, is your goal to really just stay out in the woods? It's like, I can do that, but is my wife and kids going to? No, I'm going to move. I'm going to try to go to somebody else's house.
Yeah, and I think that's the biggest thing that's missing from a lot of people's plans is the plan. Like, where are you going? And that's why it's so important, I think, to have a network of friends and family. People close by. Like, if I was to bug out, right, I don't even like saying that, but if I was to leave my house because I had to, because the place is on fire, I would go to my friend's house that lives closest to me.
Yeah.
That's where I'm going to go.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
So if you're setting up a friend network and you're all kind of the same, all right, look, something may go wrong. Unlikely though it may be, let's have a plan. I would probably divide up maybe some of my own supplies, and we should all do that. Like, okay, and I'm just making up a number, but amongst 4 friends, I'm going to put 25% of my, or 10% of my inventory over 2 or 3 of these houses, so that I don't want to just show up to somebody's house, and that's great. Everybody's friends, they'll invite you in, but then start eating into their food stockpiles. Optimally, I want to show up with at least what I need until I can go back and recover a bulk of my resources. But most of the bug out stuff, if you're going to somebody in your community's house, you trust them, it's the right location, then yeah, sure, why wouldn't you put some stuff at their house and put some stuff along the way?
Yeah, I've had family members, I've had friends, people that live in more urban areas say, if something was to go bad and we have to leave, we're just going to come to your house. And I'm like, well, hold on a minute. Like, you can't just show up to somebody's house and expect them to, wrap the FEMA blanket around them and give them a hot bowl of soup, right? That's not how that works.
Right. I mean, like, in my heart,
sure.
If a family member or close friends show up, I'm going to do the best I can.
Obviously, yeah.
But I want to have that conversation with them beforehand. It's like, look, if you show up, and let's say, for argument's sake, I've got 6 months worth of food for just the people that are on site.
Yeah.
When you show up, I go from 6 months worth of food to however many days of food that now will accommodate the new mouths.
Yeah.
So either A, if I'm bugging out in the vehicle, I'm going to bring some supplies with me from my primary cache, if I have a vehicle.
Yeah.
Just to cut down on what I'm going to, eat in, so to speak, to their logistics.
Yeah.
But
because you have priorities, right? So my priorities are to my wife and kids.
That's right.
Number one, like, they have to eat.
That's right.
And then everybody outside of that,
like, that's my job.
Yeah, my job is to take care of them, not to take care of the distant relative. Not that I don't love them and I want to take care of them, but if I physically can't provide for my kids because I'm providing for somebody else, that's a problem.
Then you're failing in your primary mission. And, I don't like the word prepper. I think you and I have talked about it. A lot of those good habits that we attribute to the prepper community would have just been normal habits that our grandmas and grandpas would have done. My grandparents grew up in the Depression, so they weren't preppers. They just kept stuff on hand.
They were just people that did the stuff they were supposed to do.
Yeah, because they were hungry.
Yeah.
They spent a part of their life hungry, starving, all that stuff. So now I call it self-reliance.
Sure.
Right? It's not prepping. It's self-reliance.
Mm-hmm.
If once we get out of that self-reliance logistics that everybody should be, it's just a good habit, and we start getting into actual planning for an emergency response, like bug outs and stuff, then I think it's important that you at least have the conversation with the people that, if they plan on coming with you, say, all right, if you want to avoid some drama, you need to bring some food.
Yeah.
Or at least bring your food here ahead of time.
Mm-hmm.
So that, let's say my son who lives out of town, if he shows up, it's like, look, you need to show up if by vehicle with a month's worth of food for you.
Mm-hmm.
Just you.
Yeah.
All right. This way I can start, it simplifies my logistics.
Yeah.
If I'm saying I've got 12 months worth of emergency supplies stored away, and that's just for me and the number of occupants in my home.
Yeah.
So if you show up, bring at least a month, so that we've got a month to figure
something out.
Right.
That's why I say the same thing. 1 month supply is what you should show up with for everyone that you're bringing. Yeah.
We may have to identify, depending on how bad it gets, new sources of food.
Mm-hmm.
You're not just going to go hunt your way out of this. Once the grocery stores close, you got to imagine all these deer and turkey there's
just going to get
there's going to be a big culling, right?
Everything on 4 legs is dead.
Yeah. So and if you're in a very popular area that's hunting, I mean, you get a bunch of city slickers coming out of Atlanta. There's so many people that think hunting's easy.
Yeah.
Right. They're just going to go out in the woods with their rifle.
Yeah.
And what they're going to end up creating is a free fire zone of everybody shooting at the same deer.
Everything that moves, every sound, bang.
It might get dangerous to rely on hunting in like right after an emergency, because everybody else is going to figure it out. Look, I've got 50, 60, 70 pounds of free deer steak walking around everywhere. Let's go harvest.
Yeah.
So show up with your stuff. If you had a month, that gives us the time to kind of assess the situation, see where our new food supplies and our new food sources are going to be. You know, if I had 12 months of resources, then, you know, maybe I start making the decision around month 6 to start rationing and bring it out. But show up with the month. Give us a month. Maybe.
And not just food.
Not just
food, all the stuff.
All the stuff.
Toilet paper.
Yeah.
All like toothpaste and all the toiletries and spare clothes and
For sure.
Like it sounds overwhelming, but it's really not if you just take your time and do it now and get all these things prepared.
Yeah, I think like if somebody was going to show up with supplies, you could probably get away with one per person, like one of those Home Depot boxes with the yellow lids. And just agree, okay, every person gets maybe one box, and in this box needs to have additional items for personal hygiene, extra food, and some additional system of perhaps water procurement and purification. But limit everybody. All right, if you're going to come to my house, I don't mind, but you need to bring that box with you so that we can.
You got to do it.
Keep the party going.
Yeah.
So bugging out, I think it sounds good on paper. It's definitely very handy in these remote and austere military settings. That's certainly a plan that they have to accomplish. But if I know where I live, right, and I know where I work, and I know where I'm going, I'm probably just going to cache. Right, I'm realistically just going to cache. I'm not going to carry a big target on my back.
Yeah, big pack.
And again, I don't know when this is going to start, right? Let's say the apocalypse is going to hit. Like, okay, great. What time? I don't know. Is it going to happen halfway through a shower?
Yeah.
So I would think my first cache that I put into place would be adequate enough to take my naked body, clothe, equip, feed, and maybe even heal from the first cache, and then start moving on to the supplemental caches.
Yeah.
And another thing I like about caches too is if I find myself in a situation where I may have to negotiate in an unknown situation with another group of people, you're like, hey man, look, like, if you whatever, I'll give you the location of some food and water. Let them go dig it up, but here it is.
Yeah.
Like that's all I got. There's no need to rob me. You can see.
Yeah.
But if you want something, no problem. Here's a cache.
Go get it.
Go get it.
Yeah.
Right.
Don't come back.
Don't come back. Well, I mean, think about it. If you're at your house and so if people are bugging out, you would ostensibly have refugees. I mean, we won't want to call them that, but that's what they are.
Sure.
You might be in a position where you've done everything correctly. You're in the right place, right town. You got the right property. That's awesome. But then you start getting people coming up, hey, at your front gate, because they see your lights are on, all this. It's like, okay, no problem. You can't come on the property, but I have a cache. I can tell you where some supplies are, and I'll tell you where these supplies are in exchange for you standing outside the gate and making sure nobody else comes in. So I might have a cache near my house that includes some type of tent and bedding capable for a family of 5, some baby formula, diapers, just all that stuff. Maybe it doesn't have to be in one cache, but part of a complete cache system. So if a refugee comes up to my front gate, I'll be like, okay, look, you can't come in, but I'm going to give you what you need, and I'll give you what you need in exchange for you keep everyone else out. And that'll give you time to kind of establish maybe a little trust.
Figure out who they are.
Yeah. Do you need to drive them off your property? But if you satisfy their immediate human requirements of food, shelter, and water, chances are my experience is they won't see you as a threat. They'll see you as an ally worthy of protection.
Yeah.
Right? They have none. You have some. You've demonstrated you're willing to be human to them.
Sure. I think it's a good
go
plan.
A long way towards avoiding issues. But caches.
Yeah, I think that's a much more reasonable idea as opposed to just throwing everything you possibly could need forever in a big giant backpack that you're not capable of carrying. Because I think that's what most people want. Most people think like what needs to go in my bug out bag? Like all the gear, the shiny things, the pokey things, the night vision, all the stuff. You know,
fire, water, food, shelter, the usual, but how much and in what configuration depends entirely on your circumstances. So I don't think there is a bug out plan that you could recommend to another person. I mean, they have to be almost entirely tailored to everybody's unique circumstances. In 72 hours, there's the, and I forget what part of it comes from, but there's 72 hours and then there's 24 hours, and those numbers typically come from, they're totally made up. Like, if I could, right, why wouldn't I have 5 days, 6 days, 7 days? Why do I stop at 3 days?
Right.
Well, that's because most of the emergency planners in civil service will use 24 hours and 72 hours as kind of a window of their response.
Oh.
So if you look at like hurricane kits and some of this stuff, they're going to give you 24 hour and 72, because that's somewhat how long it takes for these things to kind of come in. They're only telling you to cover down on 1 day or 3 days based off how long it's going to take for them to come in and restore services.
Mm-hmm.
But what's 3 days? Well, I mean, why 3 days?
Yeah.
I mean, if my objective is 10 hours away, do I really need 3 days?
Right.
I could cache weeks worth of food, right? And I can just move out with some water bottles and a sidearm and get to where
Pretty
I
much
gotta
it.
go. Yeah. So bugging out is one of those things where I hear all these bags and all good.
Yeah.
Right. It's all good.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think if you walk out with a big old tick, you're a target.
Yeah.
Yeah, so 10 miles a day is very reasonable.
Yeah.
It does not require, elite,
No.
CrossFit champion level
No.
performance.
Yeah.
Now, 20 miles a day is in general, 20 miles a day with a full pack is like a hardcore infantry.
That's tough.
That's tough.
Yeah.
So Sherman did it, right?
Yeah.
That's how he was able to pull off his march, is because his boys were booking.
Yeah.
They ditched everything. They resupplied by pillage, right?
Yeah.
So speed was of the essence, and
Yeah.
Sherman was able to basically march his army faster than they were able to kind of march against them.
Yeah.
Caesar did it. One of the reasons his unit was so profound, and all the times they maneuvered, is because him and his guys would bang out 20, 25 mile, maybe in some cases 30-mile movements a day,
Yeah.
getting to where
That's
they're
crazy.
going. Yeah.
That's far.
So it surprised folks. I think a historian would know better, but Caesar he marched his army so fast, pushing 20, 25 miles a day, sometimes 30, so fast that they came up and set up their garrison and cantonment area, prepared to fight as in the upcoming civil wars, faster than they were able to move their army to the location, and that's what gave him the tactical advantage.
Yeah.
And I'd have to dig up the specifics on it, but you start hitting 20 miles a day, man, you're moving.
That's
Man,
tough.
That's moving.
Yeah.
That's moving hard.
I
That's
can
hard
do
on
20
your body.
miles in 1 day. Ask me to do it again the following day.
Yeah.
Wouldn't be
Like-
so good.
A 100-mile forced march over 5
Yeah.
days would be pretty brutal
Oh, yeah.
even in trained military.
That'd be really hard.
So I think 10 miles a day is very reasonable. I wouldn't train with more than 30, 35 pounds,
Yeah.
right? I'd save the big 50 pounds for game day, because you're just wearing down your suspension system by putting
And
that weight
that's
on
the
there.
other thing. Don't make your training beat you up to the point where you're not ready to go. So like if let's say this morning's workout was 1,000 push-ups.
Mm-hmm.
Fine, maybe I could handle that, but tomorrow I'm going to be wrecked.
Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
So as special forces versus conventional infantry, we see, and this is just an observation, it's not a critique. They train with the heavyweights and go the distance, and that's all good because they're the infantry and they should do that. But what ends up happening is, if you're looking at your body over time, I see most of these infantry first sergeants, command sergeants, they're all broke.
Mm-hmm.
Knees, back, hips hurt. It's
Yeah.
because they were getting it done as young infantrymen, but they wore down their suspension system, their knees, their ankles, their hips, and their back, and there's no coming back from that.
Right.
SF has an excellent reputation, in my opinion, of being able to really road march. Like, you're going to go real far with super heavy packs, and they don't care how bad it hurts you.
Yeah.
But the reason they can get away with that is because they're not banging out 50-pound, 60-pound weekly movements, wearing down their suspension system. We're looking at road marching and hiking like a fitness event.
Okay.
20, 30 pounds, work on your posture, work on, your core, make sure, all those things. And then when game day comes, when
You're
I
not
put that 50
broken.
pounds on, right, I got the strength, I've got the endurance to do the movement, but I should have a little gas left in the tank for when I get to where I'm going, or if I got to keep moving the next
Sure.
day. So practice, yeah. You have to practice marching.
Yeah.
Or hiking or civilian.
Sure. All right, guys. Well, I'd love to hear what you think in the comments. Leave lots of comments for us. Ask questions. That would be great. Hit that thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't done so already. And we'll see you next time.